So heat is a big part of dyeing porcupine quills. Let's use this batch right here. These are clean. They've been washed in soapy hot water and they've been rinsed. But one thing you don't want to do is scrub them really hard because they're fragile and they could squish. So we're going to add some dye to that. And I just kind of like dip it out. So we're going to pour the quills into a pot. And we're going to bring this to a simmer so that we can make sure that the quills get dyed. You want to have it at a simmer so that you don't break the fiber down. It'll take a long time. You can even simmer for up to 2 hours.
So right here, the porcupine quills are in a nice simmer and not in a rolling boil. So the simmer you see here is that we have it at low.
This got real saucy, feeling like sauce, like ketchup. So I'm just going to add just a little bit of water to it, and it's all by sight and feel. So just a little bit. Yeah, this needs to cook more because the quills are not accepting the dye yet. So we're experimenting with grass in with the porcupine quills. And I used to watch my mom twirl the grass in. So we've got it in there.
So we'll see how this grass is doing. It looks like a nice pretty red color right now. So it's been about 45 minutes now and the quills still haven't really taken on the dye that well. And so what we will be doing now is using this vinegar. The acids in it will help like the quills take on the dye a lot easier, maybe quicker. And since this is such a small dye bath, we're just going to try to use about 2 tablespoons of vinegar. And it's kind of all about experimenting and seeing what can help the quills take on the dye a little bit faster. It's kind of like how you would dye Easter eggs or something using vinegar.
So you might not be able to see it as well, but this stalk of this piece of grass here that I'm running my finger up, that was dyed in the cranberry dye with alum and cream of tartar. This over here was in the pot with vinegar added to it. So with the vinegar to the dye bath, we get a more vibrant color. So this has been in the dye bath with the vinegar added to it, and it's starting to take the color now. It needs to be in there longer than an hour. So I think we're going to leave it in here for 2 more hours and then let it just soak in the dye bath, cranberry dye, for overnight. What we are looking at here are porcupine quills that we used with low bush cranberry dye. the quills soaked in it for a day and a half. We needed to add vinegar as a fixative because it wasn't working without the vinegar.
So we got our blueberry dye bath going now. We just added the 2 cups of pure blueberry dye bath to 4 cups of clear water. We got it heated up to almost a simmer, and we're gonna add the alum and the cream of tartar for the grass.
Right, so that the dye doesn't bleed in the grass. So we're going to add that in now before we put the grass in. And we're going to let this simmer. I forget how long we're going to let it simmer today because we only have a half day. So we're going to simmer this for 2 hours?
2 hours.
Okay,
yeah.
2 hours. And at the end of the 2 hours, we're going to add vinegar to it. I want to share with you 2 different recipes. My mother and I would put the vinegar in now, but we're letting it simmer. So we're going to wait till the end and do Rita Blumenstein's because you will have that recipe as well. And she waits till the last moment to add the vinegar. And vinegar is a good fixative, and it also captures the dye and helps to transfer it to the beach grass.
Okay, so we're gonna do, just like everything else, 1 teaspoon of alum.
June, do you think given the volume of the dye bath, we should
More.
use more?
Should we
Double
do
it.
2?
You can double it. Yes.
2 teaspoons. Okay. Well, we'll do 2 teaspoons of alum, and then we'll do 1 teaspoon of the cream of tartar, since normally we do half a teaspoon.
I already saw it turning, working
Yeah.
over on this side. Made it a little bit more purple. Maybe in the middle. And remember, cream of tartar is another aid. It's a fixative, but it also helps the alum. So you never go half and half because you want the cream of tartar to be the helper for the alum to work. So we're going to stir this, and then we're going to add handfuls of beach grass into it, let it simmer for 2 hours, and let's keep an eye on this so that this thing doesn't start wobbling and foaming up and boiling over, okay? So let's get the grass, and you can add it in a little at a time, and let's spread it. Yeah, there you go. So 2 hours. I already see that this is starting to work. Look at that. It's going to take the color really well. So Aaron and I were busy adding water to it, and each time that we added more water, as it evaporated, we added more alum and some cream of tartar. After the 2 hours of simmering this and constantly stirring it, we just kept stirring it and moving the liquid around. Then we shut the heat off and added a half a cup of distilled white vinegar, and just let it sit from through lunch and most of the afternoon until right now. So that would be 2 hours, 2 hours of sitting. And you can see that it came out to be a really beautiful color. We're going to pull this out.
Wow.
And when it dries, it will change as well. So I'm kind of like, at this point, I'm just going to use my hands. To get the liquid out of here. So we're going to rinse this. We don't want to wash the dye out of it, so we're going to take it out quickly. And remember, the vinegar will help to set the color in here. And then we're going to spread, you want to spread it out on the half and half between the two. This will dry, and then after it dries, it's all ready to weave with. I remember when we were in Rita's class, we had so many dye baths going with the grass, and she had a clothesline hanging indoors, and we were using clothespins to dry our grass. It was really pretty. Okay, there we go. So now what we're going to do is the cranberry and the blueberry dye. And first, this is the cranberry right here. We're not going to leave the seal gut in there too long. It doesn't take long for it to pick up the dye. So we're just going to submerge that in there and put this in the blueberry dye. Just flip it one way and then flip it the other way. That one. And we'll take the blueberry dye. And we'll have different results, definitely. Check this one. And this I will pat dry. We're going to leave that one soak in there for a little bit longer. It takes longer to dye blueberries than it does cranberries for some reason. It looks like I can leave it in there a little bit longer. So this has been in the dye bath for a little over 5 minutes. And because I don't want it to get too brittle, and because I like that color, I'm going to stop right here with it. And it's going to be pale. Ooh, look at that. After I pull it out, what we're going to do is help it to dry flat, which means we're going to have to be holding it. And it won't take long for it to dry. These are samples so that people can experiment with using natural dyes from the earth. That's why these pieces are small, is we're making many colors out of them, not just blue and cranberry. So this is blueberry, and this will be cranberry. And we are going to put swatches of fish skin in these. So this is going in there. This fork is for the blueberry, the other one is for the cranberry. Have you ever tried making cranberry sauce and you notice that it doesn't take much for it to really get nice and thick? It's like that with dye as well. The liquid is thicker than the blueberry, even though we use the same amount of water. The flesh side soaks in more dye more quickly. And that's why I keep turning it. The cranberry dye is taking the dye real quickly. And this has been in there for 3 minutes. Look at how it has soaked it up already. So do we want to stop there? You can go as deep as you want with it.
So for the for the seal gut, you have to be really careful about keeping it in too long because it makes it brittle. But for the salmon skin, the longer you leave it in, the darker it gets. It doesn't
Yeah.
really damage it or
Yeah,
affect
yes.
the consistency.
Yes. Look at this. Shall we stop here?
Get
I
close
think
up
so. It'll lighten as it dries. That's beautiful. See what I mean about the flesh side, how it just soaks it in? That's beautiful too. Look at that. You can go as dark as you want with these. You can leave them in longer. Remember, this dye will lighten as it dries. So what I have is 1/4 cup of cranberries, low bush cranberries here, the Knechtach in Sochbiak. And then over here I have the Chuwak blueberries. And I'm going to add, as a modifier, we're adding 1/4 teaspoon of soda, baking soda, to this, and 1/4 to that. So this is already changing. Look at what's happening with that. It's doing something. Soda does something to color. Okay, so here's the soda. We're going to mix that in. And now let's see what happens over here. You could see the chemical reaction. Oh, this is getting so dark with the soda. Okay, as a modifier, we're going to put this in here. And then we're going to use this one here. You can see how this totally changed the color. I love this. Looks more like a slate blue, denim blue color. So we're going to leave this in for 10 minutes as well. I'm going to take the spoons out because we don't want the metal in there. This is really a wine color now. You can see how using soda as a modifier changed the color to a really, really deep cranberry. And this one turned it more of a denim blue. It is different. Wow. There's your colors. So this is called Igathlum Amia. Fish skin. Igathlum. Igatluk is fish. Igathlum Amia. So what we have on the stovetop are pieces of moose skin. The one to the left, the nice orangey colored one, is commercial tanned. And the one to the right is brain tan smoked moose hide, so that's native tanned, home tanned. And we're going to be experimenting with colors and with these two.
So Gina and I were talking about how moose hide, when it's already smoked, and especially something like this that's been commercially tanned, there's already particulates in the skin, in the pores, that give it the color, and there's also oils in it. So she and I were talking about what's something else we can try before dyeing the moose hide, and one of the ways to get oils and other things out of something, just like with the porcupine quills, is to wash it in Dawn dishwashing soap. This is a new experiment for us. And then I'm going to pour in some clean water. difference in the water?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so it is coming out. And we also read elsewhere that it can be a little soapy still because the soap also helps displace oils with the dye, even in the dye bath. But I am going to rinse it one more time because I did put quite a bit of dish detergent on that. Okay, one last little rinse, and then June's giving me some paper towel to blot with because we don't want this to be too wet. And you can see even from the blotted paper, this is the yellow that was coming out of it. So although the hide's a little yellow, it's a little less yellow, and we've made some space, hopefully, in the pores of the skin to absorb more of the dye stuff that we'll be showing you in a little bit.
So we're going to put blueberry dye into this container, and we're going to there's so much enjoyment that I get out of working with dyes. It's amazing. It's wonderful. We'll do that, and then we're going to get this in. We know the shape is different, and we're going to dip this in there as well. Okay, one is commercial tanned, and this one is brain tanned. So let's get this going. We want to make sure that we have enough liquid in here because the skin will saturate the liquid. We don't want any of that to evaporate. So I will find my screw-on lids and stick that in the fridge at least twice a day. I'll shake these up. You could even do this, rotate it. But remember to shake it up because you want to distribute the sediment back onto the skins because the heavier sediment will sink to the bottom. I took it out this morning and ran it under cold water real briefly just to get the excess stuff off of it and put it over here, and it's drying nicely. I'm hoping that this stuff won't stiffen after being wet. I know the brain tan smoked moose hide is going to be nice and soft because I can feel that.
Yeah.
So this is low bush cranberries, which is Knechtak in the Sugbiak language. And then this is Chiowak, the blueberries, and the same thing, commercial tanned moose hide and brain tan smoked moose hide. It's interesting because I thought it would turn kind of like purpley blue, but it didn't. Instead, it just added a really cool brown coloring to this one. This has a little bit of reddish color to it. And I know that this brain tan smoked moose hide is going to be nice and soft. You can feel that.
Oh yeah, that is really soft.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
But I'm worried, but this is thicker, it's got to dry a lot longer. I'm worried that this might get hard, but we'll see. It's possible that the tannin in the berries will keep it soft.
We experimented with a whole bunch of different materials, both fur as well as some harder materials that are porous. So I brought some seal skin to test, and we dyed it in the cranberry and blueberry and got some coloration. The seal benefited majorly from the hot dye bath, it seems, at least on the fur. If you're dyeing the leather, the cold dye bath seems to work just fine to give some color to the back of the seal skin. We also did some experimentation with salmon vertebrae, and here we did it in the blueberry and got this super rich, deep purple, and with the cranberry we got a lighter, more red plum color. I also brought some bones from the beach in Nome, I believe. I'm not sure what sort of vertebrae or where this bone came from, but it took the blueberry dye in the cold bath very well and looks just marvelous in my opinion. I also brought a piece of caribou antler that took it very well as well. So I'm guessing the porousness of the bones really just soaked up that color and got the pigment to adhere. I did put a fish bone in the hot dye bath with the cranberry. It disintegrated. So I'm guessing cold dye bath's the best for bone. I also brought some ivory scraps that were gifted to me, and it appears that the blueberry definitely did change the color of the ivory on the outside. I'll need to cut in it to see how far it penetrated. It's probably just at the surface, and see how it works with polishing the ivory. I brought a small piece of very old fish skin that was tanned maybe in 2016, so a bit a while ago, but it took the blueberry color and has re-dried as it was before, so that's really good. I also have a crab tooth, so a piece of chintin from a crab that I had lying around. It took the color from the blueberry, the cold blueberry dye bath as well. I have a piece of nanook fur. It hasn't been rinsed yet, so that could be a part of why it's still maintaining so much color, but it does appear to have a light lavender color to it now, as well as the pieces of fox fur that I had brought. Seemed to take the color in the fur as well as the skin, but we used cold dye bath for all of these. And then for the caribou fur, this was in the hot dye bath. It definitely took the color. It looks really beautiful. So yeah, and I did bring some ptarmigan feathers that are drying, and they seem to have turned red in the hot dye bath as well. And there's a piece of kiviot that was in the hot dye bath, but it needs to get rinsed. But it looks red. It took the cranberry. This piece of kiviot was in the cold blueberry dye bath. I can't tell. It looks a little bit like it took some color, but not a ton. It's not dramatic, but it does look a little colder in tone.